all I do is just like listen to it, find the spot, listen to like the MP3s, find the spots where it feels empty or there's like a lot of opportunity, and then I create samples from there. We have a sound designer for like one of the best drum corps in the world, a drum corps that utilizes electronics like in very innovative ways. And even he's saying, like, you don't need as many electronics as you think. Even if you think you do, you have to kind of, again, it's not the star of the show. It's just used as an effect. The only thing that people need to know whenever they're requesting like a sound design, like all they need is to know what their show is and what kind of emotions they're trying to get out.
Hey everybody, this is Tim Hinton, the beast of the marching arts. Welcome to the Marching Roundtable podcast. I'm talking with Marco Iannelli today. Marco, how are you?
Hey Tim, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for taking time to talk with me. Everybody, we're talking about sound design, which is now an essential, important part of all marching band shows. And I suspect that there are a number of directors and staff members and designers and everybody out there who don't really, maybe aren't completely comfortable. How does it work? How can I add this to my show? Et cetera. So that's what we're gonna be talking about, everybody. All the answers, hopefully, to questions that you have. Now, Marco, you and I met because I was writing a show for Mount Pleasant High School in North Carolina. The wonderful director, Keith Lee, does great work with this small band. And we are doing Synchronicity by the Police, right? And when he came to me this year and said, I was in heaven because the Police is one of my very, very favorite bands. Were you familiar? Are you a Police fan before we started this project together?
I wouldn't say I was like a fan, but I've heard of their work. I've listened to their music here and there, and I've listened to Synchronicity too, because that was one of the songs that my dad would listen to a lot when he was growing up.
I love it. Well, of course, I am probably around your dad's generation, so that makes sense. But I fell in love with the Police way back in the 80s, of course. And then, of course, I'm a big Sting fan, sort of because of going off of that. But I love the Police. If you're not familiar with the Police, everybody, at least start with Synchronicity as a very renowned album. Lots and lots of songs you will recognize off of that. So the hard thing for me, Marco, was I'm creating a band show for this wonderful band in North Carolina, and how do you choose which songs? Because they're all great. Like it's a fantastic album. Which ones make sense for marching band, et cetera, et cetera. And then, so we figured that out. Of course, Keith and his staff had a lot of ideas too. We have to do the Synchronicity 1 and Synchronicity 2, that kind of thing. Those are sort of the bookends, as you might suspect. By the way, everybody, if you're interested in this show, go to Marching Monk, which is where all of my music is, and you can inquire about it there. But anyway, so Marco, you got involved because we were like, okay, we need those classic, very iconic sounds. Andy Summers was the guitarist, and he had this very specific, really interesting, different kind of guitar stuff and sounds that were sort of the soundscape in the background of the album. And so we came to you to try to add it, and that was your job.
That's correct. So when I initially got like the job, well, first I kind of got it through Andrew Seaver, who I worked with over at Connexus. And
yeah, Andrew wrote the drum parts for the show. Andrew's super talented. Yeah, and so you knew him from Connexus, yeah.
Yeah, amazing guy. But I got connected with him, and he got me connected through this. And when I was sent like all of the kind of like the source material and being like, okay, this is what we're trying to go for. Can you replicate this? And then just listening to like some of those songs, I was like, I can absolutely do my best, because these are such iconic sounds, and these are such an iconic voice that the Police created. And so a lot of it was just kind of experimenting on a main stage.
Okay, so we're going to get into the specifics about how you actually do this work, because I'm just interested in knowing, how do you find the sounds and replicate them and figure that out and create the tracks and all. We're going to talk about that, everybody. But first, I want to back up and say, okay, we all know that sound design is an important part of marching shows. It's like another layer of music or sound that is added to the show to sort of help to describe and emphasize what the music is, what the concept is, whatever. So when somebody asks you, what do you do? What is sound design? How do you describe that to them?
Yeah, so really sound design is just a whole process. And so I kind of like have this whole specific process. So whenever anybody comes to me and says, hey, I have a show that I need sound design for, the very first thing I ask is, what is your show? what is the concept? And that seems like a very easy starting point to get the idea of what are you trying to convey with your show. Is this going to be like a very light show with a lot of very fluttery sound effects, or doing a very dark, brooding show with some intense sound effects like you see in a horror movie or something like that? So I start off with just kind of like asking, what is the concept of this show, and what kind of emotions are we evoking? And that's really the big part. Like starting off with getting emotion. What is the emotion of the show, or what are the emotions of the specific movements? Once I have that, I kind of delve away from the creative side a little bit and then go more into the logistical side. So I have to ask, what kind of programs do you use? Do you use Omnisphere? Do you have MainStage? What kind of samplers do you have? And then also, excuse me, along with samplers, who do you have to play it? Is it like your top tier piano player who's also going to be playing samples on the side, or is it someone whose sole job is just to press buttons? And I've seen both sides of that in my design experience. I've worked with some groups who would have like piano player's going to do one thing, boom, 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 and then we just have some programs that will just have one person just going boom, 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 and that's all they do. So just like getting kind of like a good groundwork of what am I going to be working with, so that way it makes the overall product a lot easier. Once I have all that information and I get like the audio files for like the show, whether it's like the first movement or it's the entire show, I basically take a listen to it. I'll just kind of go on a walk and listen to it through my AirPods, and I'll listen to it like 4, 5, 6 times, like to really get a good grasp on what I'm working with. And then I kind of take some of the notes that the director or whoever I'm working with gives me, and then I just kind of like study it. And then I just kind of let it sit around in my brain for a little bit. Then once we do that, it's right to work. And then I start off by kind of thinking about if I'm doing both samples and a main stage file, like I'm picking out the sounds for the synths. I think about what kind of sounds are going to be appropriate for this part of the show, and this part. Is there like an ample amount of time to switch to those scenes? And then once I get that figured out, then starts the process of actually putting together the samples, putting together like the sound effects.
Yeah, no, it's great. Really interesting. Thank you for that explanation. So I want to back up and ask you some more a little bit basic questions about some of the terminology that you've used. Okay. So you mentioned samples. I think everybody knows what this is, but just in case, tell me what that is. It's like a little recorded track that I push a button and it plays. Can you explain this?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. So yeah, that's exactly it. Samples are just like a track that you just play, and then it just plays like a specific clip of audio.
And so that's timed out by when, like the person, whoever's going to punch that button, you said maybe it's the keyboard player, maybe it's another dedicated student to that job. They know exactly where to punch so that it plays at the right time underneath the show.
Ideally, yes.
What does that mean? Sometimes it doesn't work that way.
Sometimes, and this is more for like my first like experiences as a sound designer. Sometimes, I don't. Sometimes by accident, I don't label exactly where in the music it is, and so it's like I have to. So, director might reach out to me and be like, "Hey, so for this sample, where do you want this?" And so I don't do it as much now, but definitely like when I started, it was definitely like just kind of like a learning curve.
Sure, but that's how it would work for me if I'm a band director and I have these sounds that I'm adding to the music of the score. Then there would be a specific place that we would learn to figure out this is where they punch the button and it plays. Okay, so then backing up another step. Well, let's talk about main stage first. You mentioned that a number of times. In case somebody doesn't know what main stage is, can you explain that?
So main stage is a program on the computer. Like basically, most, if not all, marching marching programs that use electronics will use this program. It's a $30 program. That's kind of like a running joke in the electronics community. It's a program that you put onto the computer, and that will basically have kind of like what, you'll connect your synths or whatever you have into it, and you'll be able to input like what kind of sounds you want. Whether it's like, like a basic piano, or you want to do some string sounds, or if you want to even go crazier and do like some weird like growling sound effects. It's a whole program where you can just implement a lot of different sounds onto your equipment, including samples and including a bunch of other sound design elements.
Okay, so is it on a computer, on a laptop, or both, or either?
I believe it.
Wait, I said computer or laptop. That's the same thing. I mean, laptop or tablet. Jeez. See, everybody. Sorry. Hang on. I'm learning too. Okay.
It's all good. Mainly it's on a laptop. I'm not sure if there's like a tablet version, but from what I know, it's mainly laptop.
Okay, because this is what we see when we're watching someone try to get a show and they're having an issue. They're sitting around the laptop trying to make sure the connections are all okay. So then I'm going to back up another step before we talk more about the process. If I don't have electronics and I want to start to include that, I know we're really stepping back, and this may not even be your area of expertise, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Like, if I wanted to add these samples, this sound design to my show, and I'm not presently amplifying my front ensemble, what am I looking at? Like, what kind of things?
Yeah, so the big thing is this goes more into like the logistical side. This is less on like the design side, but
sure.
Really you have to start off with figuring out what kind of equipment you have, and if your budget allows you to get more equipment. Like, if you are going to do electronics in a show, you're going to need a monitor or a laptop, and you're going to need speakers and cables. Obviously, everything else is just kind of and people will also say microphones, but just for like, the most basic electronic setup, those are like the big three things. So just figuring out if you have that, and if you don't, where you can acquire those. And a lot of times, at least for like the Mac Minis or like for the Macs, for the laptops, you can find a lot of used ones that are relatively cheap, especially with how expensive some of the newer Apple products are. Like most of the groups I work with just use old Macs because they work rather well.
Okay, so, and let me just say, of course, a lot of people are rolling their eyes probably because they're like, well, of course, I have electronics with my band already. But if you don't, there's the basics. Okay, now, if I have electronics, but I've not added the sound design element, then it's really simply a matter of hiring someone like yourself, Marco, and figuring out or buying the sound design package. And then it just runs through the same electronic system I'm already using with my front ensemble, typically, correct?
Basically, yes.
Okay, and so you have this laptop, you hit the samples are programmed into the keyboards or whatever device we're starting them all on. Okay, so then it's simply a matter of having the right sounds for my show. And then you're going to help us figure out, you're going to create these instructions or samples or whatever so that we know what to do when you hand it to me, right?
Basically,
I'm trying to put people at ease on how much they don't have to know to make this work. It's sort of what I'm trying to say.
Exactly. So, like the only thing that people need to know whenever they're requesting like a sound design, like all they need is to know what their show is and what kind of emotions they're trying to get out. If they also have like an idea of what kind of sound they want to go for, then that's also a bonus. Like I've had some clients be like, okay, in this moment we want to have like this kind of this ambient sound in the background, but then we also want to have some people talking on top of it to create this little effect. Or it can be something as simple as, I want something that sounds like water. I want something that sounds like fire. Says like the little things like that. It doesn't even have to be like a whole like, I want this to happen here, this to happen here, this to happen here. It can just be like little seeds of ideas that the sound designer can eventually just like kind of use to create this whole forest of sound.
Okay, so that was really a good explanation. So again, this is what I want to make sure everybody understands. This is the way I would think about it, everybody, is, okay, we're used to having, before sound design was around, we're used to trying to create all of the effects of putting the audience in a certain place, creating a theme through the musical sounds, right? So, I mean, Marco, I've been arranging since, where dinosaurs were on the planet. And so like I was like, if we had water, then I had to put that into either the mallets or into the woodwinds or something. And I'm trying to create that. So now we have this extra opportunity to create, to display and explain our show by adding this sounds that help to describe it. So you still might have watery flowing sounds in the woodwinds and ensemble, but you might also have this layer of water sounds. So it's just another way to help immerse the audience in the concept.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And one of the big misunderstandings that people have when it comes to electronics is that electronics are not trying to like replace anything. It's just the way I like to describe it is that if you have a cake, electronics are like the sprinkles. Like there are some shows that don't call for it, or there are some cakes that don't call for sprinkles. There are, based on the personal preference of whoever's eating it, you may not even need a ton of sprinkles. Some shows you might need a lot of sprinkles, but really like the basis of it, the basis of what you're going for is like the cake and the frosting. Same thing goes with electronics. Your focus is on like the acoustic part first, getting the effect you want from those elements, and then adding the sound design as needed to kind of just enhance a little bit. So it's not trying to replace anything, but just kind of give it a little bit of a notch in the right direction from a general effect perspective.
Okay, I'm really glad you said that, because I think this is now we're onto the part where everybody gets nervous. I'll say for me, this is the part where I get nervous, right? Because my basis is always from the music and the musicians, and that's what we need to feature. And so I'm always a little nervous, like, well, I don't want to cover up what the musicians are doing, and I don't want to have all these sound effects be the major part of my show. So I feel like what you just described makes me feel a little better. It's actually another layer of design and effect that we can add to the show. Now, here's the thing, Marco, we've all seen shows where the sound design was too much. And I think this is where people get nervous, because I've seen shows where I thought, man, I can't even hear the band, or there's so many sound effects and things that it feels like that's the most important thing. And that, I feel like that's never should be, or rarely. Maybe there's moments in your science fiction show where I really want all those sounds, but I don't want it to be like the most important thing. So how do you work with the staff to make sure that you're going to find that balance?
Yeah, so I'll kind of start off with like a little bit of like a tangent. So last summer, I was a member of the Bluecoats Fellowship, which is a fellowship program, a mentorship program for up and coming designers who get to spend time with the Bluecoats design team. And last year, I got to be part of it, and I worked with the sound designer for the Bluecoats, Dr. Matt Jordan. And he said something to me, and I don't even remember the exact way he said it. But I asked that exact same question. How do you find that balance of like knowing how many samples to put in? Like, when is it too much? When is it not enough? And I don't remember the exact wording, but he said something along the lines of, I don't really make as many samples as people think I do. All I do is just like listen to it, find the spot, listen to like the MP3s, find the spots where it feels empty or there's like a lot of opportunity, and then I create samples from there. And then just like create like, I'll only make like 2-3 samples a movement, and that would really like open my mind, just thinking about, we have a sound designer for like one of the best drum corps in the world, a drum corps that utilizes electronics like in very innovative ways. And even he's saying like, you don't need as many electronics as you think. Even if you think you do, you have to kind of, again, it's not the star of the show. It's just used as an effect.
I love that you just described that. By the way, everybody, I did a podcast about the Blue Coats Fellowship Program. You can find that at the Marching Roundtable because that was really interesting. That's an opportunity, by the way, for a lot of people out there to check that out. And Marco, how wonderful that you got to be a part of that really special experience. So I think that what happens is sometimes they're so well done and so effectively placed that they really capture our attention. But I also feel like a lot of times they're so well done that I don't even really necessarily notice that they're there, but I feel something, right? So it's really, this is where you need a designer. Like this is where you need somebody that's a pro like Marco, who I'm talking to, like who has done this and knows how to find that balance. So if I'm a band director and I want to add this element to my show, because it is part of modern shows, we need to have this element usually in some way, maybe very subtle, maybe very sparse, but it's probably still going to be there. So it's a matter, as you already described, of simply you're part of the conversation, right?
Yeah. It's all about just, the whole process is not for the sound designer is not about, trying to rewrite everything. It's just about, finding the right thing. It's like I'm a movie buff, and so like if you think of it like a movie, we are not like the ones who are doing the cinematography. We're not the ones who do like all like the big editing, but we are the ones that do like the color grading, which is like a really important part of a movie, getting the right colors, getting the right lighting. And same thing happens with electronics. We're not there to dictate what a show like. We are there to dictate like what the show is from like a general effects standpoint, but we're not. It's not in like just blaring at your face all the time.
Yeah, hopefully not. So, the other thing that is interesting is that a lot of times I feel like sound design can be added later. But what we have all learned, of course, is the effective way to design a show is to think about all of the elements up front. And so now sound designers are part of the conversation from the very beginning, right? Now, there are times when you can go and add sound design later, and sometimes that is the way it needs to work. But I would assume that you would suggest you would like to be in the conversation of the design team as early as possible.
Yeah, even if you don't have like an exact idea of what you're going for sound wise, at least getting your sound designer involved like early as possible, just so they can let the ideas simmer in their brain as much as possible. The better the overall product you eventually get will be.
And I love that you explained that as part of your own design process, because I'm the same way. If I'm working with a school and I know that I'm going to be writing their show, I'm like, tell me the idea as soon as possible, like whatever. And I want to put it in my head, because the way it works for me, like you sort of described, is I'm going to listen to a lot of things over and over, but I want it to ruminate around in there. And then one day some idea comes spitting out. So if I know they're doing a show about the forest, or they're doing a show about water, or they're doing a show about Bugs Bunny, whatever it is, I want to know, because that gets the gears turning in my mind. I usually have my best ideas when I'm not thinking, it's sort of like subconsciously, like in the shower, walking my dog. Like this is where I usually get great ideas. So this is the point, everybody, is if you want to do a modern, completely effective show and you want to use all the elements that are now at our disposal, include the sound design team early on. Okay, now I have another question for you, Marco. This is a selfish question for me. I've been arranging music forever. I've literally for over 30 years, and I have lots of shows that I think are really good, effective shows from before sound design. So a lot of times what I do is someone will buy one of those shows because I like to think they're well written, they're effective, I like tuneful shows that have melodies, that kind of thing, right? So if somebody came and said, Tim, I want to do this show from before, but I want to bring it a little bit forward into the modern age, right? What I would typically do is go back and first off, I'd find out, okay, tell me about your band, what do we need to adjust in the existing arrangement to make it work better for your group? And then I would say, okay, now one of the ways we bring this into the more modern era of show design is we add more space, right? Like usually there's less people playing at one time, and there's space for maybe the front ensemble has more of a presence or whatever. It's a little bit more clean. There's more clarity. to it. So that's one of the things that I would tell them to think about. Then the other thing I would say is, now let's figure out how to add effective sound design to an existing show from the past. So where would you start that process? If I was that director and I had a show, say it's one of Tim's shows from 10 years ago, and it's a great show and it's good for my kids, but I want to add this element, what would you say?
So when it comes to that, I would say the first thing to think of is, what is the concept? Even if you're not the one who initially created the concept and you just like bought this package, knowing that concept well is going to help you out greatly. And really, I'd say it's not really that much different from, getting sound design from like a custom made show. It's really just more going to be about, also just the same process of just finding spaces and seeing what can be added there, if anything needs to be added at all. Because like I said before, not every show has to have like a sample every other measure. It can just like be important samples at like just the very specific moments of the show. So I'd say it's not really that much different from doing a custom.
Okay, the way you describe that makes perfect sense, and I'm glad that you answered it that way, because that's what I was kind of hoping you would say. And also, it's sort of what you described when you were talking to the genius from the Blue Coats. He's sort of like, well, I look at where are the spaces, where are the opportunities, where are the things needed, and I would say the same thing here. And by the way, everybody, I just did a podcast about taking existing music and making it your own, and being emboldened, empowered to change it and fix it and rethink it for your group. So that's one of my premises, Marco, sort of going in. So I'm saying, if you're already going to take existing music, you're going to sort of rethink it and empower yourself to change it, this would be another thing to think about. And that's what I wanted to put in people's head today by having this conversation, is we have this opportunity to have this sound design, sounds in the background, sound effects, voices, just whatever, like you said, whatever you're going to make the concept for this show, which, by the way, everybody, you can change the concept from whatever it was originally intended to be anyway. Music is very malleable, right? So Marco, I'm sure you've done this multiple times where somebody's come to you and said, we're changing this concept to be this, now we need you to bring sound design. Give me an example.
So I would say there was one group I worked with. They were doing a show, kind of, the show started off as a kind of a show about speech. It was a show about, speaking, but then it eventually turned into, a show about kind of like our place in the world. It talks about like our legacy and how we impact our world. So it kind of like, a lot of the sounds kind of stay the same, but then I just add a little thing to it. Like in that first show, I kind of talk about, we do a whole, we do some of the things you would expect. Like you have like a crowd of people talking, you have like whispering going on. But then once we got into that newer concept, it was more of like, I added some campfire, as if someone was telling like a campfire story. I was adding some, extra ambient sound effects, like they're in a forest, to really, bring out that whole campfire, telling a story, campfire kind of story. So it's really just taking what you have and then just adding a little bit and taking out a little bit, because as long as it's not like we're doing a completely different concept, a lot of what you had will work just fine.
Okay, this is awesome. So this is so interesting to me. Like, it makes me excited about creating shows, right? Because here's this whole new opportunity. So then the last thing I would ask is, or I would like to encourage people, and I wanted you to speak to this, is I feel like people then need to treat this like every other part of their band. So there comes a point where the show is starting to happen and you can step back and I tell people, turn away and listen, right? Like, let them do a run through of the opener and turn your back. And you might notice all of a sudden, oh my gosh, the drum line is way too loud. Or, boy, the mallets are covering up that woodwind part I didn't realize, or whatever. You have to do this. So I would say the same thing here, right? Use your musician brain and your musician ears and see how does design also balancing and fitting into the sound of the ensemble. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so I would say like one of the big things that I kind of noticed through like some of my experiences in sound design is that I get like directors who haven't had like a whole thing when it comes to that haven't really had a ton of experience when it comes to sound design. But then once I put in the samples and then they listen to it, they listen to the run through or whether like on video or during a rehearsal, then they'll like reach out to me and they'll be like, "Hey, so we like this part of the sound. Can we actually take out this part, take this one part, make it louder?" So really, they do a lot of they know a lot more than they think they do. So it's the big thing. It's all about balance. It's all about balance and knowing, what is if you listen to this, like if you were just like on a walk and you were listening to this, what times would you say, "Oh, I can't really hear this part. Oh, I need to hear more of this part. This part's a little too loud. This part's a little too quiet." It's really just about kind of like your taste and your preference, and also just trying to think about is what you're trying to give us being amplified in the exact way that you want.
Okay, I love that. And then, as you sort of alluded, if I've hired you to help me with my sound design, and I'm through my first contest, and the judges have made some comments, and I'm doing this thing we're talking about listening, I can come back to you and say, "Hey, can you adjust this sample for us, or can you make this longer or shorter?" Or like you can be a part of the ongoing cleaning and fixing, just like I would expect the person that's teaching color guard is doing the spins, right?
Exactly. Getting the sound designers like involved, not just when they create the samples, but also just like talking with them as they get feedback from the judges. It's going to improve the overall quality of not just the sound design, but just your overall show.
Yeah, and actually, to bring this full circle, this just happened with this wonderful band, Mount Pleasant High School, that we were working with in North Carolina. The reason I thought of you again is because they just reached out to you to maybe do some changes and fix some samples. And, as the show is evolving and starting to figure out. So that's part of the process too, everybody, just like you would expect. Marco Iannelli, I think you're super smart. I love that you're doing this work. Thank you for helping so many bands have more interesting and effective shows by this work you're doing. If somebody wants to reach out to you, how do they contact you?
Yeah, so you can check out more of myself, what I do, my background, and know more about my services on my website, mjisoundscapedesigns.com. If you want to reach out to me through email, that's mjisoundscapedesigns@gmail.com. Reach out through there. Even if it's something like, even if you don't know exactly what you're going for, like, "Hey, I don't know what to do here, help me out." Feel free to reach out. I'm an approachable guy, and I'll be able to help you out in whatever way I can.
MJI Soundscape Design. So that's what you need to Google, everybody, or look that up or send them an email. And Marco, I love that you just said that, because one of the things that I did not know when I was a young director that I learned and figured out later was it's okay for me to not know everything and to even admit, man, I do not know. And some of the best directors I know are the ones who will say, "Hey, Tim, like I am not good at this part, and I need your help with it. And, help me, explain this to me. Let's talk this through." So I would say this is especially important here with the new world of sound design for a lot of directors is don't be afraid to say, "Man, I do not know. I know I want this in my show and we have this idea. Can you help us?" You are there to guide them through, right?
Yep, basically, just like getting a second opinion on something, an outsider's perspective can really change a lot.
Oh gosh, I tell people to do that all the time. Always bring in somebody that doesn't know your show with fresh eyes and ears. It can be a local director who really knows what they're doing, or it could be, I think, the lunch lady who you love, who you want to bring out and say, does this show make sense to you? Because if she doesn't get it, then a lot of your crowd's not going to get it. So that's really cool. Okay, so I'm going to let you say one last thing. If you want to say a word of encouragement or one final thing about the world of sound design to someone who's watching, what would you like to say as we close?
I'd say the biggest thing I would say for sound design, for like people interested in working in sound design, or anyone who wants to be involved in sound design or wants to get a sound designer involved, the biggest thing is, don't feel like you have to know everything right away. Give yourself that patience, give yourself that freedom to just let the ideas come to you. And even if you change your ideas halfway through, that's okay. As long as you're getting the exact product that you're looking for, That's all that matters.
Okay, I love that. And also, you can start small, just like we would suggest, right? Like just do it, maybe one or two little things the first year and see how it goes. And it doesn't have to be a huge sound design production the first time. Just get into the new world, and you will, of this part of marching design, I think you'll be really excited. Marco, thanks again for doing this work and for talking to me. This was a lot of fun. Everybody, if you have questions for me or Marco, of course, you can reach out. And Marco, thanks for talking to me. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. This was great.